Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Payroll, my podcast where I talk about consulting, project management, leadership, Salesforce, running great teams, delivering great projects. And these are the key topics that I talk to with my guest today, who is Paul Harris. He runs Coacto out in the Cotswold. It's not quite in the sticks, it's actually very beautiful. It's very close to the lakes down here in England. And we talk about, on this particular episode, because there are two, we talk about giving new talent a chance to thrive and grow in the Salesforce ecosystem. We know how difficult it is to attract new talent. And today's episode, we actually go quite deeply into how his company has given opportunities to the apprentices or the young people looking to make a mark in the Salesforce world, especially in consulting. So I really enjoyed the conversation and I hope you do too. Thank you. Hello, Paul. Good morning.
Hello,
Thank you
Peg.
and welcome. Welcome on my podcast called On the Payroll. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm generally sort of a sunshine, optimistic kind of person. So even if I can reach up and touch the clouds, or it's pouring down with rain, I try to just sort of bring a little bit of sunshine to myself and those around me. So yeah, I'm feeling good.
Fantastic. I think that goes a long way, especially nowadays. In the pandemic, and everyone's got this general what did Adam Grant called it, languishing of the moods for so many reasons. I think having such a great mindset and attitude does a lot to the people around you. So we'll touch on that in a bit. Thank you for your time. What I'd like to start with is I'd like you to tell us the story of how you got to where you're today, which is the founder of Coacto, and all the stuff that you've learned along the way. You can start at any point, but I would just really love to hear your journey.
Okay, yeah, thanks. It's always good to reflect back on a journey. It's not something you do very often unless you're writing a CV or maybe looking at a LinkedIn profile. But yeah, happy to do that. I mean, I started out my career as a software developer, and I graduated with a degree in geology and computer science, and I wanted to go into development. But as I went through my career, I gravitated closer and closer towards customers, and to eventually ended up in a sales role, in fact, which is where I got my first experience of Salesforce. But it was really around trying to, I guess, find my niche. My wife's got a book called "What Colour's Your Parachute," and the significance of that only really becomes apparent when you've been working for a few years, because you realise that you're good at some things, you're great at other things, not so good, or don't enjoy others. And for me, it was really about trying to find what my parachute was, I think. But I didn't realize that until probably fairly recently, actually. Around the time of starting Coacto, I think I really had a sense of who I was and what I was good at and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to create for Coacto. And it was really bringing together all the threads, all the learnings that I'd had starting out in my career as a developer, working on a variety of software development projects, and then moving more into technical pre-sales roles. And ultimately, I moved out to the US for a while as a pre-sales engineer, working for a software development tools company. And whilst I was there, I met some amazing people. I lived out in San Francisco. It was a blessing from heaven to live there for a while and to meet all these exciting people, live in such an exciting place. And it gave me, I think, a real lust for life as well. And not that I didn't have that before, but it reinforced those sort of positive messages. I think the sunshine really helped too. But around that sort of time, I was exposed to a European development project that was looking at like a platform, trying to build a platform into which organizations could support their business processes. You could write tools to that platform, you could run your business on that platform. And it was a research project, but didn't really take off in the way that was expected. So when I was introduced to Salesforce, I moved back to the UK and worked for a couple of organizations and ended up working for another software tools company that were based out of San Francisco and San Diego. And this was probably in around sort of 2000, 2001. And so Salesforce was in its very embryonic stages then. Mm-hmm. And then sales director came into one of the meetings and I said, I found this great technology. This is it. This is the future. This is really what's going to revolutionize our business and our engagement with customers. And everybody said, okay, well, what is it? Let's see it. But it was kind of rolled out just by, there you go, great technology, figure out how to use it. And I was responsible for the international distribution channels of the business. So I had all of Europe, I had Asia, PAC, parts of South America as my sort of area of responsibility. And I then used my development expertise to configure Salesforce, then in a very embryonic way, to support that business, to support channel management, to support partners, to support remote sales pipelines, and to do all the reporting, consolidate it back so I could then present it to the person that I reported to, the VP of sales, and to give him that consolidated view. So I started out really with Salesforce as a user, but because of my technical background, I was able to align what I needed to support what I did with what Salesforce provided, and I built a whole bunch of things. And amazingly, the organization kind of, they had this plan for adoption, but it didn't really quite get off the ground. And then they were looking at what I was doing. They said, well, that's working really well. Can we do that? And so they then adopted the structures that I'd put together and the processes I'd put together for my part of the business, and then rolled it out across the rest of the business, which was quite flattering for me. I didn't get any recognition for it, but I wasn't worried about the recognition. It was the fact that I'd created something of value that was then of value to somebody else. And towards the end of my time with that organization, I realized I had a hunger for doing something of my own. And I crossed paths with a colleague that I used to work with when I was a software developer, working on that embryonic platform that was part of a European research project. And he said, look, I've got a great idea for a company, but I need somebody to be like the shop window, and I need somebody to help me put the systems in place for that company. I said, yeah, okay, I'm up for that. So we started this company. It was a payroll and employment structure company that provided a legal structure to freelancers, contractors, and so on. But the interesting thing was, just having had that great experience with Salesforce, I realized that the operational hub of the business was about managing people and about managing information. And so I said to him, I said, look, I've got this great technology that I've just used. Why don't we try and adopt that and build the business around that? We can use leads and accounts and contacts to manage all of our customers and the information coming into the business. And we did, and we made it the operational hub. We built interfaces to a timesheet and expense system. We had exports of data out to an accounting system, and a whole variety of things. This is back in sort of 2004. So again, Salesforce is probably 4 or 5 years old at this stage. So the kind of capabilities we've got today in the platform didn't exist. So what we didn't have available to us, we just built it if we needed it. And that worked really well for 6 or 7 years. And then I decided that the company was running me and I wasn't running the company, and it wasn't really aligning with my passions and my growth and the learning that I wanted to get. It became like carrying around a heavy pack, and I wanted to get rid of the pack and just kind of liberate myself and follow my path. I think I was starting to recognize what color my parachute was at that point. And having gained all this technical expertise and knowledge, I had a strong commercial understanding. I'd worked in sales and channel management for some time. I realized that those were the kind of qualities that might make a good consultant. And actually, that's kind of what I've been doing for that organisation. So in 2011, I took the brave step out into the big new world of contracting and consultancy, and started to, sell my wares, not sell myself, but you know what I mean, sell my expertise, and started to work, in a number of projects in an independent fashion, and that became a very natural thing to do, because I think the experiences I'd had, living out in the States, having my own business, and the other sort of cumulative experience that you build up as you go through your career, really put me in great stead, because I realized I could talk to anybody from the CEO down to a developer, because I had an understanding of their perspectives. And that worked really well for me, and I consulted for a few years. I passed through the doors of a couple of consultancies when they had heard of me or heard about what I'd done and said, "I would really like to hire you." So I worked for a couple of consultancies, and that really gave me a really strong foundation in kind of the infrastructure, the engagement, the delivery structure, the processes, the project delivery, because previously I've been either a team of one or part of a team with all that provided to me. And then, as luck would have it, the last consultancy I worked for back in 2015, I think it was, decided that Salesforce wasn't for them. They'd acquired the previous consultancy I was working for, and they wanted to build a Salesforce practice, but it hadn't quite worked out in the way that they'd envisaged. I mean, I'd worked with them to grow the business, and I thought it was growing really well, but they just wanted to stick to the knitting, wanted to stick to their core managed services. And so they said, "Look, we can't continue with this, Paul." And I said, "Well, great, I'm okay with that. Are you sure?" Yeah, I'm fine. If you give me all the customers that I've managed to bring on board in the last couple of years, I'll take all of those for you, so you don't have to do anything with those or find anybody to manage them. And you can let me go, and I'll create a company to service those customers. And that's what I did. And that's where the idea of Coacto was born. It was, for some people, it would have been a very dark moment, a very devastating moment to be told, "Look, sorry, we don't need you any longer." But for me, it was like a sunrise. It's just this opportunity opening up in front of me. And in the last sort of 3 or 4 months of working there, I just put in place everything that I needed to start Coacto. And of course, on day one, it was just me, but I'd been lucky enough to take on this customer base, take on a couple of opportunities that were looking for a Salesforce consultancy. And I started it in August 2016, and haven't looked back. And I just feel everything that I've learned along my career has really sort of crystallized into this opportunity to grow Coacto over the last 5 years. And it's been an amazing journey. I've met some amazing people. I've learned unbelievable amounts of things and acquired lots of knowledge. And it's great. I know, and I mean that genuinely. It's really, really great. I really enjoy it hugely. And now to bring on people, create a team, create that vision and culture and so on, has also been really fascinating. To some extent, it takes me away a little bit from the stuff that I really enjoy, which is engaging with customers, designing and architecting solutions to their challenges and their business problems. But as an overall recipe and a mix of ingredients, it's wonderful. I really, really enjoy it.
Wow, that was really quite an interesting story to hear, and especially the last kind of twist at the end of the story, which was how you have managed to turn something, as you say, that could potentially knock someone off and see such a huge opportunity in that. Have you always been like this in the way that you approach things?
That's a very insightful question. I guess those kind of qualities are there. Whether they surface or not, or how they come out, I think to some extent depends on the circumstances. So I would say yes. A very good friend of mine, quite quite a famous musician who I've known for a number of years, said to me once, he said, "You'll be successful at whatever you turn your hand to." And this is probably 5 or 6 years ago, before Coacto. And I sort of thought about that and examined that statement and realised that I will always try to make the best of whatever's thrown at me. So I try to see the sunshine when the clouds are closing in or the rain's falling, because it's about the steps forward that you take are the most important ones, rather than reflecting back on what's behind you or what didn't happen or what should have happened. It's about what you do next. So I think I've always been a what's next kind of person. And I think it's probably fair to say, I've got strong perseverance and good resilience. And so when that thing happened, I realised I wasn't going to let that beat me. And and there've been other events in my life when I reflect back, some things both professionally and personally where they might have really knocked somebody for six, and you could have ended up in the gutter somewhere. But I always felt that I was determined enough to say, well, that's not going to happen to me. Okay, this has happened. Take the learning and take that step forward. And that's always what I've done, I guess. And that's how I approached this, starting a consultancy. I've never started a consultancy before. I've had a couple of companies previously, including a live music promotion company where I met the artist that I just referred to. So I think I've always had that diversity and interest to do things and try and be successful at things, and also not to be knocked off my perch, because there have been a few attempts for various things to knock me off my perch, and I won't be knocked off my perch. I might stumble and wobble a little bit, as we all do as we go through life's journey, but for me it's really about taking those positive steps forward. And I think it's probably also about recognizing what those steps might be. You may be taking a step into the unknown, which I was when I started Coacto. I'd worked for a couple of consultancies for maybe a couple of years, and someone might say, well, that doesn't give you enough, but that's right, it probably doesn't, or didn't give me enough. But I knew that I had enough about me and enough knowledge and understanding to take that, probably for some people, very brave step. So I'm going to give this a go. And where I was in my life, it had to be successful. I've got a wife and family to support. So that creates a very compelling, need to be successful at what I was doing there. Necessity is the mother of invention, and the mother of invention was with me, around that time, and continues to be with me. But I think it's also about, I like the idea of making my own weather. It's all very well so it's raining. Bring a bit of sunshine in. Try to think optimistically and positively. And I try to sort of, when things aren't going, according to plan, look, just stand still, look what you need to do, then take that step forward. Because if you don't take that step forward, you become almost like paralyzed, and you don't learn to deal with those challenges and those issues. And really, whether it's I've run out of coffee and I need to run to the shop because I'm desperate for a cup of coffee, or whether it's I really need to get some more people in to help deliver this project. Those are equal challenges depending on where you're at in your life. It's about how you face those issues. Well, it's pouring down with rain and there's 110 mile an hour winds, but I really need a cup of coffee, so I'm going to run out and get the coffee. Or I need to go and get those people, or whatever it is. I think it's having that positive outlook that really helps take those steps forward. But also, it's also about, I guess, as I think referring to earlier, it's about bringing the people around you and touching the people around you in those ways. Because I think, if you can make a positive difference to somebody in their day, make them smile, make them feel better, support them, help them, that for me is as valuable as winning a new customer and delivering a successful project, because I'm adding value in terms of what I do.
Amazing. So I'd like to hear a bit more about your current baby, which is Coacto. So tell me a bit more about it, the number of people you've got there, because I can see that they bring you a lot of joy, this creation and the family that you've built. and I know a few people there. And so I'd like to hear a bit more about how you've built this, the people that you have in there, and how you came about creating the culture that you have there.
That's a great question. I think when I started the company, I wanted to make sure that it represented, my values and who I was, and I support a number of charities, I believe in total respect and equality and diversity, all of those things. I think you have to, if you live your life in that way, then it's important to run or anything you're associated with in that way too. And I wanted to bring all those values into the business. And it's really about how you treat people. So for me, the number one part of my company is the people that work with me. Be it the people that are employed by me, or the people that are, we use some outsourced people, some subcontract people. All of those people, they all get treated in exactly the same way, which is with 100% respect all of the time. And everybody has a voice, and everybody has a part to play. And whether I am, the owner of the company, or whether I'm a team member working on a project, everybody gets treated in the same way. And I really wanted to create the sort of the vision and the values and the culture of the company based on that principle of respect. And I think from respect, I think everything else follows. Diversity follows from that, equality follows from that, because if you have that respect, that is, for me, that's the foundation stone for culture. But I think ultimately everybody wants to be respected and recognised, and everybody wants to feel engaged and loved and part of a family. I mean, I think those are intrinsic human qualities. And I think if you engender those, then you create that, as Mark Benioff has tried to do with Salesforce, this idea of Ohana and family is hugely important. And, I feel blessed that actually I think that way too. I'm not borrowing his idea, I'm just leveraging the fact that he's obviously a bigger company than me, he's got more of a voice than I have, but that doesn't mean that I can't make a difference in my own world as well, and align it to some of the things that Salesforce is doing, because I think they're doing some really great things around sort of vision and values and equality and diversity, also around the environment, and also the recent thing that they're talking about around Team Earth, which I think we should be focusing on the planet that we're inhabiting right now. And whilst it may be important to reach out to the stars, I think the change needs to happen right where our feet are standing today. And there's some high priority things that we need to be addressing. I kind of feel that some of those are being lost, and it's good to see them pursuing those. And actually we try and do that too. And it's that can be about our approach to people, diversity. It can be our approach to the environment. It can be our approach to just keeping fit and moving more, so that we create the right kind of positive environment to work in. But for me, it's also about recognizing that this idea of leaving your personal life and your problems when you walk through the office door is not something that ever sat well with me, because I don't think it's actually easy to do that. I think if you're troubled by something in your personal life, you're going to bring it into the office, because you're going to be carrying it around like that pack I was referring to earlier. And you need to support people through that. And that's one of the things that we really try and do amongst the team, is if somebody's got some challenges, and a few team members have had some challenges recently with one thing or another, is to support them through that. It's not to question why or what, it's how can I help you? What can I do to make that better? How can I make your life easier at this point in time? What can I take away from you to reduce the worry and the stress that you might have about this thing that's happened? And I think when you provide that nurturing, engaging infrastructure, people gel. They really do gel. They come together as a unit, and you then create almost that they become the culture and become part of the culture and help grow the culture. So it means it's not all about me, because I don't want it to be about me. I may have initiated that, but I want it to take on a life of its own, and for that identity and that culture, to grow. So, those are really very strong values to me. Somebody remarked recently, and your question is very timely, because we've been looking at how we make that more apparent, I guess, in our identity and who we are, how we do that in our app exchange listing, for example, how we do that with our engagement with customers, how we do that with the delivery of our projects. And I think just being the way that we are and representing our culture, just that naturally kind of comes out is what we're finding. But I think we probably need to make a little bit more of that, because for us, you've got to look holistically at the world. You've got to look holistically at a person, the personal side, the work side, and so on. And then I think you'll get the best out of everybody.
Thank you for that. Just as an extension to that, so you're talking about people being the most important thing. One of the challenges that a lot of partners face at the moment is resourcing, finding the right talent. And I know that you are a strong proponent of the apprenticeship scheme. So I would love to hear a bit more about that. I know you've got 2 new apprentices. Talk to me about the whole process and how that's working for you right now.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, there is a resource crunch in the industry right now. We know that, and that's partly because of the rate that Salesforce is growing and trying to bring talent into the ecosystem. The Salesforce is growing faster, and the ecosystem is growing faster, and new talent's coming in. So that creates a challenge. And when I looked at resourcing various positions within the business, I think almost everybody, or most of the people in the core team, I brought into the ecosystem rather than taking them from somewhere else in the ecosystem, because that ecosystem needs to grow, but it can only grow if we bring people in from the outside, as Salesforce has said on many occasions. And I also wanted to try and give people opportunity. So one of my sort of engagement delivery managers had an IT background in managed services and development, but those are transferable skills. So yeah, he doesn't, he has Salesforce certification now, but no Salesforce experience. But he has bags of experience that I felt would really add value to what we were doing, and so we hired him, and he's been absolutely fabulous for us. But equally, trying to, as the company grows and we get more customers and the projects get bigger, I felt that I wanted to offer opportunity to other people. And in my previous role, when I had that managed services employment company, we took on a few young people as apprenticeships, and it worked really well, because for some of those people, nobody gave them the opportunity. They couldn't get a job because they didn't have any experience, but they couldn't get any experience because nobody would offer them a job. And I felt that, aligned with trying to grow the company and bring people into the ecosystem, apprentices would be a great way to do that. So we spoke to LDN Apprenticeships in London, and about what we were looking to do. I said, yeah, we can help you. And long story short, we engaged a lady called Charlotte back at the end of April last year, and it's really wonderful to see somebody that has no experience in working in this space flourish and grow as we try to provide her the right support and infrastructure to acquire the knowledge, to give her an opportunity to work with customers and to grow and expand her skills. And it's something that we'll do again very soon. I think we'll take on another young person and give them an opportunity. And we have to balance that, because of course that does require significant effort and resource on our side to do that. But I think it's the right thing to do. And Charlotte has really grown into the role. And it's nice to have people that are challenging you, bringing new ideas. That youthful exuberance is a wonderful, wonderful thing to have around you. And a few months ago, we took on another apprentice. This was a chap that previously worked for one of the big banks, and he was a casualty in one of their downsizing operations as they moved some operations offshore. And I think partly because of his age and possibly in his location, again, nobody would give him a chance. Here's somebody that's got probably 25 years IT experience, working for a big bank, working on some big projects and big deployments, lots of experience, no experience of Salesforce. But I felt that, and I've known him for a while through some of the music stuff that I do, and I could see that he was struggling. I thought, do you know what? I think we can offer him a chance. We can embrace, him as part of the Coacto team. We can put him on an apprenticeship, which is unusual for an older person to go on an apprenticeship, but it's perfectly viable to use that as a cross-training vehicle. And he's been with us now for about 3 months, and it's great to see his confidence growing, his engagement growing, and his contribution increasing. So he just needed a chance, and that's what we've done. So for us, it's been a really positive experience. I think one that we'd recommend, everybody look at. Really, give people a chance, whether they're young or older, and then work with them, because I think the results, for them and for the company can be incredible. But again, you just got to give people that opportunity, and if you do, you'll find that they'll grab it with both hands. For us, it's been great. It does take a lot of energy, it does take a lot of resource, but that's just about investing in people and investing in the company and investing in the ecosystem, and it feels right to do that kind of thing.
How is this, Salesforce has the Talent Alliance and the Vet Force and the Refugee Force, where they fund and assist these people in getting certification, and then the Talent Alliance are a group of partners who are willing to give them opportunities to interview and potentially make them an offer. How is that different from apprenticeship?
That's a good question. As those initiatives you mentioned are something that I felt that we need to take a look at as well, to see if, because I guess the Vet Force folks are former military personnel that come out. They're on Civvy Street, and they don't have necessarily any commercial qualifications or any industrial qualifications. They've got military qualifications, and so they're trying to cross-train people, to come into the ecosystem, along with some of the other initiatives you mentioned. I think the overall program is the same. I think it's just got a different label, pay, and I think Salesforce were right to invest in programs like that, to give people that may be in minority groups, or people that have less of a voice, or people that maybe don't feel that there's any opportunity for them, those kinds of opportunities. And by creating those programs, I think they have really brought it into daily conversation, that there are opportunities there for people that have come out of the military, for example, that where we can provide them these kind of opportunities. I think the training programs are very similar, and I know there are starting to be more of those that are coming on. Heather Black at Supermums has done an amazing job in encouraging part-time people, part-time mums, initially, to give them the opportunity to gain knowledge, experience, certification, so they can then add value not only to themselves by feel they're contributing and earning money, but also then to engage with organizations, be employed, work independently. So I think there's a variety of initiatives there. I think the overall focus is exactly the same. It's giving people an opportunity. It's finding a vehicle that allows those opportunities to be created. And Salesforce, I think, provides some support to some of the apprenticeship organisations, as they do for things like the Vet Force and so on. And to be honest, I think that's a key way for growing the ecosystem, as well as meeting their diversity and inclusion aspirations, and making sure that the ecosystem can grow, because it can only grow if new people come into the ecosystem. We can't just keep moving people around from consultancy A to consultancy B to consultancy C.
Yeah, absolutely. This leads on to my next question, which is, I believe that one of the reasons that actually there's a couple of threads to this, when consulting partners take on inexperienced junior consultants and don't provide them enough support, the mentoring, the guidance, the coaching to actually run projects, because the way that we do it as consultants quite different from how the end users do it. There's best ways of working, there's how we best practices, so on and so forth. So one of the messages that I got from one of my students of my masterclass, where I provide consulting training, is that she joined a new partner and she's been asked to run a project discovery on a platform that she was not familiar with. So one of my rants is that a lot of partners don't invest in the young and junior talent. And from what you're saying, that you have had to put in quite a lot of investment of your time, your team's time. So obviously that takes a hit on your utilization of your team. I'd like to get a sense. So apprenticeship, they're young, they have, I guess, no Salesforce experience. That's something that they come on, and no work experience, no job experience. So the understanding about professional conduct, about how you dress and how you behave with clients, basically they're starting from ground zero. What was the time commitment of your team? Did you make a conscious decision to lower your utilization target for your team to say, to whatever that amount is, and how long was that commitment for? So I want to try and get an idea as to the commitment that you had to give these people a second chance to say, I'm willing to take a hit on my revenue for 6 months and take something a percentage lower. What was that cost to you, or the investment that you had to provide?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We certainly recognize that by taking on the 2 apprentices that we did, that our utilization had to drop, because you're right, providing the right kind of mentoring, coaching and support infrastructure was vital to their success and obviously our success. We were lucky, I think, with the young apprentice we took on, did have some work experience, and I think that was, for us, that was one of the criteria, is that this wasn't to be their first job. We wanted somebody that had some experience. Now, they had no experience of working in a commercial or an IT environment whatsoever, but I wanted them to have had some work experience, and so I think that really helped. The other chap we took on had, say, been working for a bank for sort of 20-25 years. But equally, when you're coming into something new, completely new, whether you're young or old, it can be quite a daunting experience. And so we recognised that it was probably going to take a 20% hit in terms of our time that we'd need to dedicate on a week-by-week basis across the team. Now, some people might say, that's really high, that's a big investment, can you sustain that? Yes, we can sustain that. But whatever kind of investment that you make, be it, you take some money from a bank to invest in your growth, you take some younger people, you train them and invest in them so that the payback comes later. These are all types of investment. So for me, it seemed, I didn't want to go and borrow money. I didn't want to give away any equity. At that point in time, I wanted to recognise that we had a way of investing in those people. And we created a framework to provide that mentoring on a regular basis. And it's been very interesting actually tracking what some of the other apprentices are doing on the same program, and how other organizations are managing that. And I think the feedback I'm getting is that we've done a good job because we are trying to top and tail everything with that safety net, that support infrastructure that gives them the opportunity to experience, learn, maybe make a few mistakes, but equally know that we've always got their back, always, whatever the situation or the circumstance, we've always got their back. And that's done within a formal training framework that runs over that 18-month period. That means that they get one or two Salesforce certifications, that they get a internationally recognized business qualification, of which the Salesforce learning is a part. And so we fitted our our engagement and onboarding of those people around the framework that was provided to us. But I'm sure other folks have done it differently depending on how their organizations are structured. But for us, I think it has been a big investment, but it's investing in their future, it's investing in our future. And every organization and every person that wants to grow has to make some kind of investment in time, or money, or gifting knowledge, or paying forward, whatever it happens to be, to yield that value, to yield those results, to yield that growth. And I didn't question that. A couple of people have said to me since, did you realize that it would take quite so much energy and effort? And if I'm to be honest, probably not. I think I underestimated how much energy and effort it would take. But having made that commitment, just like at the start of the pandemic, I said I wasn't going to furlough anybody. I was going to continue to pay everybody, internal and external, because I felt that we had a duty and a moral obligation to those people. And that's what we did. And similarly with the investment in these people on the apprenticeship program, we're committed to making that investment, over that 18-month period, with the offer of a full-time job at the end of that, assuming successful completion of the program. It just feels right, I think. It's all very well saying, well, we've got to make the numbers work, the utilization is going to go down, the profit might go down a little bit, but actually we're creating something positive, we're creating something of value, and that feels right. And it was only actually a couple of weeks ago, I was out with some friends for dinner, and one of the folks who works at a very large energy company was astonished at what we were doing as a smaller organisation. So I don't really see us doing that even in a large organisation, because we're so focused on doing what we do, we're not actually really trying to create the value that you're trying to create in your organisation. And that made me feel good, because it made me feel that we were doing some of the right things, for the right reasons, to give people that opportunity for growth. And of course, there is an element of, I'm looking at investing in the company to grow the company, to get the payback, because the company pays everybody's wages ultimately. So it has to be successful.
So I just want to dive down a little bit into this. So there's an offer of a job at the end of 18 months. You are investing time from your team. Are you also paying the apprentice during this 18 months?
Yeah, we have to pay the apprentice. There's a number of aspects to the scheme. So depending on whether you get sponsorship or not. So I think Salesforce did sponsor one of our apprentices and paid a sum of money to support the training aspects. For the second apprentice, we paid that, and then we have to pay obviously their salary. We have to provide all the appropriate licenses and laptops and everything else, and any expenses, traveling and so on. So they're considered to be full-time employees. They're on an 18-month contract, but the offer is there for that full-time position at the end of that 18 months. So yeah, we have to make that. So there's a financial investment as well as a time investment in those people, because of course they've got to put food on the table, and who would pay that? I'm not sure the government would pay that, although clearly with the apprenticeship scheme, the government do invest a significant sum of money in funding the training. It's part funded. I think it might be 80%. I think the government pay. We pay the remaining 20%, and then we pay their salaries and everything else that goes around being, a junior consultant in any organisation.
So you talked about topping and tailing. So if you can get down to specifics, what did you do differently with the apprentice that you may not have done with, say, a junior hire, or any expectations around what they?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think our onboarding process, for anybody coming to the organisation, the framework is largely the same. So we took on a marketing person during the pandemic. Actually, we didn't get to meet them for probably 4 or 5 months, I think, and that was an interesting exercise, onboarding somebody remotely. I've never done that before, but recognizing that's what we had to do, we created an onboarding framework that we felt would support that person being introduced into an organization where they may not know the technology or they may not know the business space. They certainly need to understand how we operate, what we do, how we do it, and so on. So we created that framework as part of that sort of onboarding during the pandemic. And then we extended, I think it's fair to say, we extended that framework for the apprentices to support their technical development and their technical learning, their targeting towards certifications and the academic side of the apprenticeship. And I think particularly the area that probably differs the most, I think, between sort of junior hires and the apprentices is we have regular we have twice a week check-in meetings. We have a meeting at the beginning of the week where we look at what they've got on their backlog or their list of tasks. We look at what their objectives are, or should be for that particular week. And then obviously we work with them throughout the week. So if they need any help or assistance, they're always, nobody's ever really working on their own. They're collaborating with other team members. And at the end of the week, we have a reflection meeting, short meeting, probably 15 minutes or so longer if required, to reflect back on those objectives, what they learned, what went well, what didn't go well, where they might need some support, where they might need some additional training or learning or coaching, so that we've got this bookended mechanism to define the objectives and then feedback at the end so that we can adjust dynamically. It's each week is kind of like a little sprint, really. What we're going to do at the beginning of the week, how do we do at the end, where do we get to, what's next? And then so it is like a sprint, actually. So we've got these like weekly sprints with each of the apprentices, and we record all of these in a document alongside the timeline for the entire apprenticeship, so we can track where they're at, they can track where they're at, we can see the discussions, we can both contribute to those, objective setting and planning, and also so the reflections, and that's worked really, really well, because we're staying very close to these people, and any red flags that might come up, any things that we need to address, come up in those meetings, so that we can minute them, we can record them, and we can then act on them. And I think that's going to become our standard onboarding process, probably for everybody. Clearly, if it's a very experienced person, we might not need to do that for so long, but I think it's worked so well for us that will become the Coacto standard onboarding mechanism.
Amazing, thank you. Just one final question on this before we wrap up. I want to be very mindful of your time. We're almost out of time. What's the size of your company? Because you mentioned this other company that was smaller and said we can't take on apprentice. So how many people works at Coacto at the moment?
Yeah, so we've got, I should know the number off the top of my head, shouldn't I? But I don't. So in total, including some of the extended team, we've got about 12 people working for us at the moment. We will be growing on that number this year for sure. We have got quite a few projects that are lining up, quite significant projects for us, and so I'd see us adding, a few team members over the course of this coming year. So
it's amazing.
Just from one person to having that team of 12. Sometimes it might jump up to sort of 15. Again, it depends on the project. So one of the things you recognise in an organisation is that there are peaks and there are troughs. Luckily for us, it's mostly peaks and peaks on peaks sometimes. So that means you have to go out to the market to get some temporary resources from time to time, or lock in some longer term resources, and that's a balancing act. It's a challenge that we all face in the Salesforce ecosystem. But again, it's about creating those opportunities, identifying those people that would have a natural fit into the business. But equally, it's about bringing people in that don't necessarily aren't models of me or models of the other people, because you want new experiences, you want new perspectives, you want new ideas to come into the business. So equally, I'm trying to maintain sort of a 50-50 split, between male and female. It's very, very hard to do that. We're not quite there yet, but that is one of my objectives. It's actually probably in our V2 Mom that we do. We use the Salesforce V2 Mom framework, and that works well for us.
So, I mean, what you're doing is already amazing, and even more so now that I know how many, because I was just talking to an ex-colleague he's currently at Cognizant, and we're talking about different size partners and utilization and of large and small companies. So for you to take a 20% hit on utilization for a team of 12, it's massive. And I was speaking to larger partners with about 40 people, and they can't see themselves doing the kind of coaching and the kind of hit on utilization that you currently are doing. So fantastic, well done. Thank you so much for spending the time with me and telling me the journey that you've been on, and in particular, you're spending so much time just talking about your culture for Coacto and how you have been investing in the young people and how you are creating the culture that you so clearly enjoy experiencing in the people around you. Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure, Pei. Thanks very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.